we have touched upon the concept of relational database and this property of uniqueness, right? Uniqueness of a record in a database, right? That's the very important property, because this uh, whole concept of relational database or relational database management system or software, anything which is relational, is based on this property of relational uniqueness of record, or property of uniqueness, right? There it states that each and every record will be of unique nature in the uh, database, or maybe in the set of records, right? So we have taken the definition of database as a collection of record or set of records of similar kind of objects, of similar kind of records, or similar kind of details, right? And now we are imposing this property of uniqueness. So it says it is a collection of related records, right? So अगर आपने definitions देखी होगी, तो there must have a lot of definitions which are referring that a relational database is a collection of related database. So related means they are related to each other, and they are related in a sense that there will be no duplicate copy of any record is maintained or stored in a database. That's what related means. Related means it is something to this uniqueness thing, that there will be no repetition of a same record possible. That is the sense of relatedness, right? That's the only relatedness. It does not mean the literal meaning that each and every related data record is related, right? Because it will have different meaning. If we say each and every record is related in other terms, it will serve different meaning. But here the meaning is that there will be no duplicate record will be stored in the database or will be kept in the database because of this property of uniqueness. Now, in the today's lecture, we will discuss two things. First thing is related to this property of uniqueness. That's one part, and we will be partially starting the discussion of next chapter, right, which is the actual chapter of the database, because till now from the lecture 1 to lecture 6 we have discussed the various basic elements, basic concepts, and their their connection with the other concept, and how these various concepts are basically touching upon the various basic concepts or basic things of the database systems levels, right? So today we will be closing the first chapter of your syllabus, which is introduction of database, where we have touched upon various basic concepts and basic idea how database system is built, what are the levels and other things. And after that, we will be touching upon the very initial concepts of chapter 2, where we will discuss the design, how database could be designed, and this discussion will help you to understand how we will be going in the lab 1 or lab 2 discussions during the labs, right? It will provide a platform, or it will provide the basic idea about how to create, how to start the database design in the labs, right? So in the previous lecture, we have taken this property of uniqueness as the base concept, and now in today's lecture we will discuss how you can implement or achieve this property of uniqueness, right? So property of uniqueness is what? It ensures that each and every record in the database will be unique. When I say record, what does it mean? Record means this one single tuple, one single row, right? So I'm not saying about one single cell value, like any value which is kept in one single cell. It is not like that. It is a cell value. It cannot be a record. Record means, so suppose if I want to read the detail about a student in a database table, so if I read first name, last name, middle name, his date of birth, his father name, his email ID, his address, his pin code. So if I read these entire details about a student in a table, it means I am reading a record, one record, right? So in the database, actually, we used to refer these things as a tuple, right? So record is a tuple or row, right? And anything which is like vertically defined, we used to refer them as an attribute or a column, right? I hope these things are familiar to you. So till now we have discussed database term and term schema, and after that we have taken about data model. So now today, now we will briefly understand that there are various terms being used during the discussions in different lectures. So schema is clear, data model is clear. Now row is also clear. Row means a tuple, or maybe there's a set of values which happens in a one single row, or maybe in the single of tuples, right? Similarly, we can define attributes. Now, there is a term called cardinality. So cardinality, I don't know, are you familiar with this term, cardinality? So if you have a database table, how do you define term cardinality? Any answer? Can you respond for this? What is cardinality? Okay, anyone, if you want to respond, you can post reply. Oh, number of columns. It's not number of column. Number of columns is degree. Uniqueness of data. Mehul, great try. Mehul, it cannot be uniqueness. It's not uniqueness of data in one particular row. It's simply so there is no concept which defines the uniqueness of data in a row, right? So typically there are two terms. These terms are very basic terms. So number of tuples in a table or database table is referred as a cardinality. Number of tuples, various tuples. Number of rows, you can say. Similarly, number of columns or number of attributes is called degree of relation. These are the very generic terms. Maybe they referred as a units also, units of database, because database is a set, right? So number of rows. Okay, Kushagra, finally you have posted the right answer. So okay, let's go. So these are the basic terms. I've maybe forgot discussing these terms during the first three lectures. So today I have taken up. I think all of the basic terms has been covered. Now we will discuss table. It is the impression which we have shown to you in multiple times in the previous lecture notes. 5 maybe हमने share किया था how a table, how a schema looks like, how database state look like. So this structure is referred as a table, obviously, right? So table is a concept of database, right? And it is coming from, the definition of table is coming from the definition of relation. I think you must have you are familiar from the term relation, right? And it is closely related to the concept of set, right, in mathematics. Because computer science is basically having each and everything rooted in mathematics, right? आपको लग नहीं रहा होगा, लेकिन ऐसा है कि कंप्यूटर साइंस का कोई भी सब्जेक्ट आप देखेंगे, चाहे ऑपरेटिंग सिस्टम हो, डेटाबेस हो, कोई भी सब्जेक्ट, each and every theory, each and every concept is basically coming from some kind of mathematical notions, right? That's why it is referred as a applied science. Engineering is referred as applied science because it is simply applying the concepts of fundamental science, mathematics, maybe physics, or maybe something else. So the whole theory of database is basically based on the concepts of mathematics, right? So we will be referring the term table now. From now, whenever we will discuss something, it will always for a table and on a table, right? So if we refer table, in a database, multiple tables are possible. That's obviously because one table will represents to a one class or one set of attributes. Like we can have a table of employee, we can have a table of student, we can have a table of courses, likewise, right? So a table will have similar kind of records into it, and a table will have naturally various attributes and various columns, right? In database, actually, in database or maybe in a DBMS, there must you can have a table with at least one attribute and one column, one attribute and one row actually, and that is often referred as a डुअल टेबल। अगर आप ओरेकल आपने इम्प्लीमेंटेशन स्टार्ट कर दिया है तो डुअल टेबल कहता है। सो बाय डिफॉल्ट ओरेकल सपोर्ट्स a table of one attribute one row and it is referred as a dual table. So ये सब चीजें आप Oracle के लैब में डिस्कशन जब इम्प्लीमेंटेशन करेंगे तो आपको आइडिया लगेगा कि how these things are actually created in the uh, created or maybe implemented by the DBMS, right? So we are not going into these details much. Now we will be touching how you can implement the property of uniqueness. Right. So uniqueness means we have taken the detailed discussion on it. Now, property of uniqueness means you have to either externally maintain an attribute in the table, or system will ensure that there will be this property of uniqueness ensured. Right. So we have discussed that. Suppose in a database which you have captured, student का ही database है, there is no possibility of attributes based on which you can maintain the property of uniqueness. In that case, we have to externally create a record, and these records are referred as a primary key, right? So in the relational data model or in the relational database, these primary key concepts or other key concepts are referred as a constraints. Constraints are basically kind of you can say as force conditions. You have to do it, you have to make it, or system will be taking care of it. So something like that. So I say anything which ensures that this property will be ensured in the database is referred as a constraint. So these constraints are basically defined by the user. Whenever we create a database, you have to define these constraints, and you have to define these constraints on a particular attribute, right? That's one way of doing it. Second way, you can create a separate attribute, right? जैसा अगर मुझे स्टूडेंट्स की डिटेल कैप्चर करनी है तो एक तो तरीका ये है कि मैं ट्राई करूं कि किसी एट्रीब्यूट में जो स्टूडेंट डिटेल हम कैप्चर कर रहे हैं, किसी एट्रीब्यूट में क्या पॉसिबल है कि हम उस एट्रीब्यूट में कुछ कंस्ट्रेंट अप्लाई कर सके, एक फिल्टर अप्लाई कर सके. दैट्स वन वे ऑफ डूइंग इट. If it is not possible, then you will be adding a separate column, right? Separate column, separate attribute in the relation, and that attribute is referred as a primary key, right? So today we will discuss these 5 constraints. Let me share my screen, and these constraints are having very generic explanation or generic definition, right? So if you want to elaborate, understand more, or understand details, you must be reading these explanation in the book actually, right? So let me take 2 to 3 seconds, share it, Windows, share. Okay, so I hope this is visible to you, right? Yeah, it is presenting screen. So okay, now it is available to you now. So basically there are broadly 5 constraints defined, right? अब इन टर्म्स से फैमिलियर होंगे. सो टू इंश्योर द प्रॉपर्टी ऑफ यूनिकनेस वी हैव वेरियस constraints, right? Constraint term, and these first 5 constraints are basically imposed in a single table. अभी मैंने आपको कहा कि डेटाबेस में बहुत सारे टेबल्स हो सकते हैं. एक एम्प्लॉय हो सकता है, डिपार्टमेंट हो सकता है, और स्टूडेंट्स हो सकता है, कोर्स हो सकता है, लाइकवाइज. So it is important to understand that there are 5 constraints which can be imposed on a particular table. We cannot apply it naturally. Individually सबके अलग-अलग कर सकते हैं because सब अपने अलग-अलग tables हैं. But if you want to apply a condition or constraint between 2 tables, pair of tables, then you will be referring the last 6th one, which is called foreign key. So let's take one by one, and then we will have discussion on this thing. So basically you need to understand that this first way of doing or applying the constraint is primary key. So whenever we are defining additional attribute, so primary key will always be a basically attribute which will have some kind of unique and not null values, right? तो जब आप डेटाबेस क्रिएट करेंगे तो आप प्राइमरी की उसी एट्रीब्यूट को रख सकते हैं, डिफाइन कर सकते हैं. सो अब डिफाइन रिलेशन. इफ यू सी SSN, so SSN इज सोशल सिक्योरिटी नंबर जो ऑलरेडी गवर्नमेंट ने जनरेट किए हुए थे. अब हम उसको डेटा में स्टोर करते हैं तो हमें पता है कि द वैल्यूज इन दिस SSN विल बी ऑफ नेचर यूनिक एंड नॉट मींस नॉट ऑन का मतलब ये है कि देयर मस्ट बी सम वैल्यू. It cannot be null, it cannot be a blank, something like that, right? So whenever we are creating a database and we observe that there will be a attribute of these data objects जो कि यूनिक होगा और वो नॉट नल होगा, सबके लिए अवेलेबल होगा. So we can make that attribute as a primary key. So like in case of ours, if we want to collect the data of Indian citizen, we can ask them Aadhaar card number. So we know that the nature of Aadhaar card number is that it will be of 16 digit and it will be a unique number for each individual, and it will be available for each and every individual. So that's why it is important to understand that.
Hello, sir. Sir, your voice is not clear.
So what is happening? It is cracking or something else?
It's cracking, sir.
It's cracking. It's cracking heavily or normally?
Everywhere, sir.
बहुत ज़्यादा प्रॉब्लम हो रही है. Yes, please.
Yes, sir. We lost you on the last.
Yes, sir.
Topic discussed.
5 minutes, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, कितने मिनट से लास्ट है?
2 minutes.
Okay, तुम लोग को था. Okay, so there are my chats also. Voice is not clear. Yes, अभी ठीक है?
No, sir.
अभी भी okay नहीं है? Okay, let me stop sharing first. Maybe actually today data this connection is also not stable. Department's connection is also not. So what about right now? What's the voice quality and audio quality right now? What's the status? अभी ठीक है?
No, sir.
No, sir.
So what to do in this case? 4/10. What's the 4/10? Okay, you're rating now voice. Okay, so let me take. Actually, this switching internet is now also not helping. So let me do what? Connect with my phone.
Sir, you can turn off your video.
Okay, sorry. So I think now it is stable, right?
Yes, sir.
It's fine now.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let me share it because now I think network will be fine from now. So let me continue. So Okay, do not need to post this much of messages. Yeah, so basically primary key is clear now because you can define any attribute which is uh, unique in nature and it must be available. So you can identify one such kind of attribute and immediately define as the primary key. Similarly, you can impose a constraint that there can be some attribute which will be of null type. Not null means that attribute do not need to be a unique, but you can make it not null. Similarly, unique means if you define attribute as unique, the values on that attribute will be uniquely defined. ये हो सकता है कुछ values उसमें missing हो. तो इस तरीके से primarily to maintain, one thing you need to understand, to maintain the property of uniqueness, only this attribute will be help you out. This attribute will help. Other attributes are to simply constrain the value, right? ये केवल प्राइमरी के एट्रीब्यूट है जो आपको ये हेल्प करेगा प्रॉपर्टी ऑफ यूनिकनेस मेंटेन करने में, क्योंकि बाकी जो कंस्ट्रेंट है लाइक नॉट नल, यूनिक, चेक एंड डिफॉल्ट, ये केवल कंस्ट्रेंट्स हैं सब. क्योंकि आप कई बार जब डेटाबेस क्रिएट करेंगे ना तो आप रियलाइज करेंगे कि इट इज काइंड ऑफ मैंडेटरी सिचुएशन टू डिफाइन अ रूल फॉर एट्रीब्यूट, राइट? जैसे आप कहेंगे कि मैं स्टूडेंट रिकॉर्ड मेंटेन कर रहा हूं तो मुझे स्टूडेंट का जो नेम है वो तो चाहिए. इट कैन नॉट बी अ नल और इट कैन नॉट बी अ ब्लैंक वैल्यू, ब्लैंक फील्ड. सो इन दैट केस you will be defined those kind of attributes which are necessary. Naturally वो यूनिक नहीं होंगे, नाम तो रिपीट भी हो सकता है, सरनेम भी रिपीट हो सकता है, बट हमें चाहिए वो. So these kind of fields are referred as a not null. There must be some value for those attributes. Similarly, जब आप डेटाबेस रिकॉर्ड मेंटेन करेंगे तो आप कुछ एट्रीब्यूट्स ऐसा चाहेंगे कि जो जब भी उनमें डेटा आए वो यूनिक हो, लाइक ईमेल आईडी फील्ड, राइट? email ID field can be of what? It can be of null also. It can be null also. कोई किसी के पास email ID नहीं है, कोई इशू नहीं. But if you are having some value to enter in this column of some student, it should be a unique nature. तो ये जो constraints हैं, ये constraint आप ये ensure करने के लिए apply करते हैं कि it is coming from the requirement कि ये attribute data ऐसा ही maintain होना चाहिए. Similarly, there must be some attributes on which you need to apply some kind of check that there must be only these possible values should be entered by user. So like कई बार हम gender column में values apply करना चाहते हैं और वहां पर जब हम database create करेंगे तो we can have this condition or check that only female and male things should be entered or must be entered. So you can apply simple check on those kind of attributes. Similarly, default, right? So I hope this is clear to you now, that these first 5 constraints can be imposed or applied while creating a database table. I'm saying, right? So you can define any attribute based on their nature and impose these constraints, right? जब आप database table create करेंगे तो जब आप attribute को define कर रहे होंगे, then you can add these constraints. Like अगर आप नेम को डिफाइन करेंगे तो कैसे करेंगे? टेबल के अंदर नेम होगा, उसका डेटा टाइप ऐड करेंगे, देन यू सिंपली ऐड नॉट नल. तो जब आप डेटाबेस क्रिएट कर देंगे और फ्यूचर में जब उसमें डेटा रिकॉर्ड अपलोड करेंगे तो नेम कॉलम के अंदर इट विल नॉट एक्सेप्ट एनी ब्लैंक थिंग्स. इट विल आस्क यू टू एंटर समथिंग इनटू दैट नेम कॉलम फॉर ईच स्टूडेंट. सिमिलरली इट विल हैव फॉर यूनिक के लिए यूनिक वैल्यूज एक्सेप्ट करेगा, ब्लैंक अलाउ करेगा बट यूनिक अलाउ नहीं करेगा. यूनिक ब्लैंक अलाउ नहीं करेगा एक्चुअली, राइट? करेगा बट यूनिक वैल्यूज होनी चाहिए उसमें. दैट्स व्हाट. सॉरी फॉर ओवरलैपिंग, राइट? सो इट इज ऑब्वियस दैट व्हेन वी से यूनिक कंस्ट्रेंट, इट मींस यूनिक वैल्यूज ओनली इन दैट पर्टिकुलर कॉलम और एट्रीब्यूट. चेक मींस उस एट्रीब्यूट में वही वैल्यू एक्सेप्ट करेगा जो उसके चेक कंस्ट्रेंट में डिफाइन है, जो हमने तब किया जब उस डेटाबेस को क्रिएट कर रहे थे, डेटाबेस टेबल क्रिएट कर रहे थे. Default means you can assign a default value for any column, so it will take only default values. तो default value में होगा कि जब आप database table create करेंगे और create करने के बाद जब future में उस value set करेंगे तो default वाले column में आपको values add नहीं करनी, वो default value set कर देगा, right? So that is about the first 5 constraints which can be imposed only on single table, right? तो अगर आप एक एग्जांपल लें तो जैसे एम्प्लॉय रिलेशन है यहाँ पर, So in this, okay, let me see. I'm audible, perfectly audible, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let me go back. Okay, so from here, if you see, there is a table employee, and here we have SSN number. SSN number is primary key. This we have discussed in the previous lecture also. And primary key attribute is usually defined or indicated by having underlined thing. SSN is underlined. So SSN is a primary key. It means what? It means whenever we will be adding new employee, we will have a unique and not null value for this SSN. That is obvious. And if we have defined this check constraint on this gender column, it will accept only M and F. That's it. That's what it means, right? Similarly, this super SSN is a column where there is a there is field called null. Right, null, it means this attribute is accepting null values, right? It means this column is a not null, right? That's why it is accepting null values. So similarly, right, so ऐसा नहीं है कि इस employee table में सभी constraint use किए हुए हैं, but whenever we will be defining, हो सकता है first name में किया हो, because each and everything things are available for each and every records, right? तो जब आप lab में जाएंगे तो आपको इंश्योर करना है कि यू शुड बी क्रिएटिंग अ टेबल जहां पे हर एक एट्रीब्यूट में अलग अलग कंस्ट्रेंट इंपोज्ड हो। उसका लिखने का पैटर्न सिंपल है। आप टेबल का क्रिएट करने का जो सिंटेक्स होता है उसमें जब एट्रीब्यूट पे डिफाइन करते हैं तो एट्रीब्यूट नेम लाइक फर्स्ट नेम, उसका डेटा टाइप कैरेक्टर टाइप होगा, साइज होगा, देन थर्ड फील्ड इज दीज कंस्ट्रेंट्स जो आप उसमें इंपोज करना चाह रहे हैं। उन कंस्ट्रेंट का इफेक्ट तब आएगा जब आप उसमें उस टेबल में डेटा रिकॉर्ड इंसर्ट करेंगे। Now let me talk about this last type of constraint, which is referred as a foreign key, right? And foreign key means what? एक टिपिकल सिनारियो आप ये समझो कि एक कंपनी है, राइट? एक कंपनी के अंदर या कि एक इंस्टीट्यूट है और उस इंस्टीट्यूट में 3 डिपार्टमेंट्स हैं, राइट? और उन 3 डिपार्टमेंट्स के अंदर ही आपको सब एम्प्लॉइज को, स्टूडेंट्स को एनरोल करना है, राइट? सो हमें ऑब्वियसली क्लियर है कि अगर इंस्टीट्यूट में 3 डिपार्टमेंट्स हैं तो उन 3 डिपार्टमेंट्स में ही स्टूडेंट्स को एनरोल होना है और फैकल्टीज को बेसिकली असाइन करना है उसमें। सो वी कैन नॉट असाइन a faculty to a department number which is not existing in the institute, which is not created or recorded in the table. तो यहाँ पर एग्जांपल लो तो डिपार्टमेंट नंबर 145 इंस्टीट्यूट के अंदर है, वो फंक्शनल है। इट मींस only these 3 department numbers can be used to define a relationship with department to student and department to employee, right? So basically this is something called a referential relationship. We are having this relationship between the object of one table with object of other table, right? And this relationship controls uniqueness property, right? Uniqueness property कि एक टेबल का एक ऑब्जेक्ट है वो दूसरे टेबल के एक ऑब्जेक्ट से कैसे यूनिकली रिलेटेड है, right? And that's why we are using this foreign key constraint और foreign key concept. अब ये काम कैसे करता है और कैसे आएगा? देखो, अब आप डिपार्टमेंट और एम्प्लॉय के लिए पेरेंट और चाइल्ड रिलेशनशिप है, तो डिपार्टमेंट अगर हम ये कहना चाह रहे हैं, हम ये रिलेशनशिप डिफाइन कर रहे हैं कि employees are working in the department, right? So like we are working in the computer science department, so it will be of 1:1 relationship, right? That is clear. वैसे स्टूडेंट के लिए होगा कि स्टूडेंट इज एनरोल इन कंप्यूटर साइंस डिपार्टमेंट, दैट इज वेरी ऑब्वियस एंड वेरी क्लियर। लेकिन अभी तो कॉलेज के केस में ये नहीं होता, लेकिन ये हो सकता है कि डिपार्टमेंट की लोकेशन, यहाँ तो एक एग्जांपल है, यहाँ पर एक लिखा हुआ है कि एक डिपार्टमेंट की 2 लोकेशन हो सकती है। इफ यू कैन सी, सो एम्प्लॉय और डिपार्टमेंट का रिलेशन तो क्लियर है 1:1 और स्टूडेंट का 1:1 है, राइट? बट इफ यू सी डिपार्टमेंट और डिपार्टमेंट लोकेशन का जो रिलेशनशिप है वो बेसिकली ऐसा है कि एक डिपार्टमेंट 2 लोकेशन हो सकता है। सो द रिलेशनशिप इज ऑफ काइंड 1:m, राइट? तो ये चीजें हम अगले चैप्टर्स में डिस्कस करेंगे, जो हम डायग्राम्स डिजाइन करेंगे, डेटा डिजाइन करेंगे। तो यहाँ पर मैं केवल ये बात इसलिए डिस्कस कर रहे हैं हम बिकॉज we need to identify or we need to define this property of uniqueness among two different tables, right? And to define it, you need to add a foreign key constraint, right? The foreign key constraint केवल इतना impose करेगा कि whenever we are defining a relationship between table, right, there must be a master table and there must be master and or maybe master and child or something like that, right? तो उसमें है कि आपके लिए डिपार्टमेंट अगर मास्टर टेबल है तो 145 डिपार्टमेंट्स हैं, तो इन्हीं वैल्यूज को हम यूज कर सकते हैं। अगर हम कहें कि ये एम्प्लॉय जॉन डिपार्टमेंट 5 में काम 5 में असाइंड है, Franklin is also on 5, 4, 4 is something like that. We cannot use a department number 3 to be assigned to a new employee because department number 3 is not existing. That is one thing, right? और अगर रिलेशनशिप ये कॉलेज ने कहा है कि एक एम्प्लॉय एक ही डिपार्टमेंट में काम कर सकता है तो 1:1 है, तो ऐसे ही होगा। अब ये अलाउ कर दे कि जॉन 2 डिपार्टमेंट में काम कर सकता है, इन दैट केस वी हैव टू क्रिएट न्यू रो वेयर ऑल द रिकॉर्ड्स विल बी ऑफ सेम नेचर बट दिस डी नंबर वैल्यू विल बी डिफरेंट, राइट? तो वो सिनेरियो अलग है, रिलेशनशिप का जो रेशियो चेंज हो जाता है वो अलग बात है। बट वी कैन नॉट क्रिएट अ रिकॉर्ड विद अ department number which is not existing in the institute, right? Because of this property. अगर आप ये डिफाइन कर देंगे ये रिलेशनशिप जब आप डेटाबेस क्रिएट करेंगे तो उस टाइम डेटाबेस टेबल में अगर ये रिलेशनशिप डिफाइन करते हैं यूजिंग फॉरेन की कंस्ट्रेंट, वो आपको देखना होगा कैसे होता है, सिंटेक्स में ही होता है सिंपल। उस केस में अगर आपने डिफाइन कर दिया कि दिस डी नंबर इज रेफरेंसिंग टू दिस डी नंबर ऑफ डिपार्टमेंट, देन it cannot, employee table cannot take d number value as 3, 4, 3 or 2 or something which is not created here. That is one. This is what or basically a uniqueness thing, right? तो ये complicated नहीं है, आप लैब में implement करेंगे तो इसको अच्छे experience कर सकते हैं, right? So I hope these things are clear now. How? So these are the 5 constraints, 6 constraints which are basically used in database to impose this property of uniqueness. I hope things are clear, right? So because most of the students often get confused by the logics, maybe logics or the maybe concept of foreign key. So foreign key का purpose केवल ये है to define the property of uniqueness among 2 different database table in a database, right? सो ये हमेशा होगा कि जब आप रियल वर्ल्ड एप्लीकेशन के लिए कोई डेटाबेस क्रिएट करेंगे तो वहां पर हर एक टेबल एटलीस्ट एक रिलेशनशिप होगी 2 टेबल्स के बीच में। एटलीस्ट एक रिलेशनशिप मींस देयर मस्ट बी एटलीस्ट 1 फॉरेन की, राइट? फॉरेन की जैसा अभी हमने एग्जांपल जो देखा तो उसमें फॉरेन की डी नंबर था एम्प्लॉय टेबल में, दैट इज अ फॉरेन की and it is referencing to the department or of department number column of department table. तो ये इंश्योर करने के लिए कि यूनिकनेस प्रॉपर्टी मेंटेन हो रही 2 रिलेशन में इसके यूज करते हैं। That's why whenever a attribute which is a foreign key of a table is referring to a attribute of another table of another attribute, the attribute in the master table should be a primary key. That is the only rule it is requesting for. ठीक है? तो एम्प्लॉय टेबल में हम डी नंबर जो फॉरेन की डिफाइन कर रहे हैं बिकॉज इट इज रेफरिंग वैल्यूज फ्रॉम अ फॉरेन और डिफरेंट टेबल। तो जिस टेबल को हम रेफर कर रहे हैं उस टेबल के जिस एट्रीब्यूट को रेफर कर रहे हैं इट मस्ट बी अ प्राइमरी की, राइट? क्यों? क्योंकि प्राइमरी की एट्रीब्यूट ही ऐसा है जिसमें वैल्यूज यूनिक रहेंगी और नॉट नल होंगी। दैट्स द ओनली रीजन। आप दूसरे एट्रीब्यूट्स को भी कर सकते हो लेकिन उसमें प्रॉब्लम वही होगी कि यू विल मिस समथिंग, कभी वो यूनिक होगा, कभी नॉट नल होगा, कभी चेक होगा, तो देयर मस्ट बी सम पॉसिबिलिटी ऑफ null values also. तो इसलिए it is basically designed in the database, it is designed in the DBMS system कि जब भी आप कोई फॉरेन की क्लियर डिफाइन करेंगे किसी एट्रीब्यूट को, it will be referring to a attribute which is the primary key of the master relation, master table, right? So I hope these things are clear now. So if I raise a question here that what is the what is the similarity between primary key and unique constraint. So primary key constraint and unique constraint, what is the similarity? So can you respond for it? Anyone? How primary key constraint and unique constraints are similar? No answers?
So both of them cannot have the same value for different data in the database.
Yes. So uniqueness must be there. That's what. But in case of unique, you can have null values, right? So the similarity is that they will have unique, and difference between both is they will. So in case of unique, we can have null also. So that is obvious also, that's what their names are referring. So it is very clear and straight away, right? So with this with this discussion, I assume that things are clear now, that by these ways, or maybe by these constraints, you can impose some kind of a filter or a condition on an attribute, right? But primarily, if you want to maintain uniqueness in a relation, you will be using primary key. And if you want to maintain uniqueness among two tables or between two tables, this foreign key will be helping you, right? So primarily, out of these 6, 2 are very important, right? And 2 are essentials also. So जब भी आप database create करेंगे, तो एक database में एक primary key आपको define करना पड़ेगा. नहीं करेंगे तो भी चलेगा, ऐसा नहीं है, but वो problem बाद में होगी जब आप database करेंगे. And if you are having more than 2 tables, there must be at least one relationship between these 2 tables, and to maintain it or to reflect it, you will be using foreign key, because foreign key captures the uniqueness between 2 database tables. That's what, right? So in चीजों का discussion फिर से आएगा when we will be touching upon SQL part, right? And on basically whenever we will be discussing few concepts during the lecture number 8 or 9, right? So ये again चीजें उसी form में, but that time it will be of more of use case, उसको हम use कर रहे हैं main concepts को, right? So now we will be going for the discussion of so with this actually we have covered most of the things which are coming or considered as the part of basic concepts of database, introduction of database. So I hope you are familiar with the different terms, terminologies, and different concepts related to our database. Now we are basically touching upon the first discussion on the term called database design, right? So designing is something else. Till now we have discussing and touching upon basic things. Now we are going into actually the database design. That's which is the objective of this course, right? How should I start for designing database for any given problem, right? So I don't know आप कितने familiar हैं कि software कैसे design होते हैं. So right, that's the big question actually, and you will be having course maybe in the next semester, that how to design a software engineering, that's the course name. So primarily in industry, what they do actually, so whenever there is a requirement to design a software, there are 2 or 3 ways of doing it, or there are 2 or 3 ways of conducting it, right? So software design करने के लिए आपको requirements चाहिए, right? Requirements are of different type, right? कुछ हो सकती हैं business requirements, कुछ हो सकती हैं functional requirements, बहुत सारे types की requirements होती हैं, because अगर आपका business जो भी business है, there you need to implement or install the ATMs. तो आप क्या करेंगे? आप ATMs, अगर आपके business में required है कि ATM, banking एक बैंक ही खोल रहे हैं, तो naturally ATM की need होगी. तो आप ATM में क्या ऑपरेशंस होने चाहिए, उसके लिए आप बहुत सारा डिस्कशन नहीं करेंगे. You simply conduct a case study on existing ATMs, right? तो रिक्वायरमेंट्स कैप्चर करने के बहुत सारे मोड होंगे. That is what software engineering takes care of ki how to capture the requirements. If something is existing, let's conduct a survey, let's conduct a case study, let's conduct a scenario study. If for collecting the requirements nothing is available, you need to have a discussion with the client or customer or maybe business user, whatever terms you use. So there are two individuals. One is from company side, company ABC, जो software industry company, software development company है. There is this individual name as a customer, client, and business user or maybe. So both gathered for some meetings, some discussion, and exchange some inputs, and these inputs will be refined, captured into a document, refined way. तो वो written text documents होगा, लेकिन टेक्स्ट डॉक्यूमेंट को लेके हम डायरेक्टली कोडर के पास नहीं जाएंगे. देयर आर टू स्टेप्स एट लीस्ट इन्वॉल्व. सो द फर्स्ट स्टेप ऑफ कैप्चरिंग द रिक्वायरमेंट is referred as a requirement engineering, requirement analysis phase. There a person from a company, the person who is referred as a business analyst, right? So business analyst will capture the requirements from the person or maybe we used to refer as a customer, actually customer or maybe client, anyone. So he will discuss these business requirements during this phase. So this is a mini world. So mini world is nothing but it is referring to the area or to the person or to the entity जो जिसके पास requirement है, right? वैसे तो पूरी दुनिया है, लेकिन आपका जो business है वो ये अपने आप में एक mini world है, because we will be designing the requirement or the boundary of this business into a software, right? So that's why we are referring this mini world, and all the things which are happening in this mini world or mini business will be conveyed to the person, business analyst person, by a client or customer. And during this phase of requirement collection and analysis, these all requirements of your business will be captured. They are analyzed, they will be presented in a systematic document which is referred as a SRS, right? So SRS is basically nothing but it is a software or system requirement and requirements, right? So SRS is a formal document, right, which is often the outcome of this phase, first phase. तो ये जो हम डिस्कस कर रहे हैं ये सॉफ्टवेयर का पार्ट नहीं है, सॉफ्टवेयर इंजीनियरिंग सिलेबस का पार्ट नहीं है. दिस इज हाउ द सिस्टम्स आर बीइंग डिजाइन्ड. एंड जब आप बहुत से रिक्वायरमेंट कैप्चर करते हैं तो कुछ रिक्वायरमेंट्स होंगी, जब मैं आपसे कुछ कन्वे करूं कि आप एक प्रोडक्ट बनाइए, एक सॉफ्टवेयर बनाइए, तो कुछ रिक्वायरमेंट्स उसमें होंगी जो फ्रंट एंड के लिए हेल्प करेंगी. हाउ सिस्टम शुड बी डिस्प्लेइंग द इंफॉर्मेशन, समथिंग लाइक दैट. हाउ रिपोर्ट्स विल बी देयर, उसका रिपोर्ट के हेड में क्या होगा, दोस एस्थेटिक थिंग्स आर देयर. So हमारा कंसेप्ट क्या, हमारा फोकस तो डेटा पे है केवल, राइट? कि हाउ टू डिजाइन द डेटा फॉर सपोर्टिंग ऑपरेशन ऑफ दैट पर्टिकुलर बिजनेस और दैट पर्टिकुलर सिस्टम और सॉफ्टवेयर. सो फ्रॉम दिस सेट ऑफ रिक्वायरमेंट्स व्हिच आर कैप्चर्ड इन अ डॉक्यूमेंट कॉल्ड SRS, we will be identifying few requirements where or whichever are important for creating a data. So those requirements are often referred as a data requirement, right? तो बाकी requirements चली गई. ये आप देखो ना, इसमें से एक तो फ्लो है कि डायरेक्टली हम डेटा रिक्वायरमेंट निकाल लिया, उसके बाद जो बची हुई रिक्वायरमेंट्स है those are called functional requirements. Functional requirements वो सेपरेट फ्लो में जा रही है because it is a parallel track. तो डेटा डिजाइन करना और सिस्टम के अदर पार्ट्स डिजाइन करना, चाहे वो GUI हो, चाहे अलग कंपोनेंट्स हो, चाहे इंटरफेस डिजाइन करना हो, एनीथिंग, इट इज अ पैरेलल डेवलपमेंट प्रोसेस. सो ड्यूरिंग दिस फेज, रिक्वायरमेंट कलेक्शन फेज, जो डॉक्यूमेंट बना उससे हमने डेटा रिक्वायरमेंट की चीजों को टिक करके सेपरेट डॉक्यूमेंट कर लिया. अब आपको अगेन SRS डॉक्यूमेंट था, उससे आप एक सेपरेट डॉक्यूमेंट बनाएंगे, राइट? एंड इट इज रेफर्ड एज अ डेटा डिजाइन डॉक्यूमेंट, राइट? सो डेटा रिक्वायरमेंट जो टर्म लिखा हुआ है यहाँ पे, दीज आर नथिंग बट इट इज अ डेटा डिजाइन रिक्वायर्ड data design requirements document, right? So with this now, because बाकी चीज तो हमारे लिए इंपॉर्टेंट अभी नहीं है, बाद में इंटीग्रेट करेंगे तो बाद में देखेंगे, बट अभी के लिए क्या है, the very first step of data design is to segregate the data requirements from a SRS which is a whole diagram. जो सॉफ्टवेयर बनते हैं उनके बहुत बड़े डिटेल SRS होते हैं, क्योंकि ये ज़्यादातर टेक्स्ट में लिखे होते हैं, और टेक्स्ट में लिखे होने की वजह से ये एक्चुअली लंबे और काफ़ी ज़्यादा डिटेल्ड वे में एक्सप्लेन होते हैं, बिकॉज यही एक फर्स्ट डॉक्यूमेंट है जिसके बेसिस पे पूरा डेवलपमेंट सॉफ्टवेयर का होने वाला है। हर एक चीज़ इसमें डॉक्यूमेंटेड रहती है, राइट। इसके बारे में आप नेक्स्ट सेमेस्टर में काफ़ी डिटेल पढ़ेंगे, बिकॉज इट इज़ इट इज़ बीइंग हैंडल्ड बाय द सॉफ्टवेयर इंजीनियरिंग कोर्स। तो वहाँ पर हर एक प्रोसेस है कि कैसे ये पूरी प्रोसेस मीन्स कलेक्टिंग रिक्वायरमेंट इज अ वेरी फर्स्ट स्टेप नेचुरली, सो वी आर नॉट गोइंग टू डिस्कस इट मच डिटेल, बट हम अज्यूम कर रहे हैं कि रिक्वायरमेंट्स हमारे पास ऑलरेडी डॉक्यूमेंटेड थी, उसमें से हमने डेटा रिक्वायरमेंट सेपरेट कर ली एंड वी हैव अ सेपरेट डॉक्यूमेंट फॉर ऑल दीज डेटा रिक्वायरमेंट्स। नाउ व्हाट we have extracted the text statements जो टेक्स्ट फॉर्म में इंग्लिश फॉर्म में लिखे थे उनको हमने सेपरेट तो कर लिया, बट क्या ये रिक्वायरमेंट्स सफिशिएंट होंगी टू डिजाइन a proper database, to design a proper table, their attributes or their relationship, anything, right? तो ज्यादातर लोग जो हैं वो ऐसा अप्रोच प्रेफर करते हैं कि सर जो भी रिक्वायरमेंट्स आप दे दीजिए, आई विल बी एबल टू आइडेंटिफाई द टेबल नेम, टेबल एट्रीब्यूट्स which is the primary key and all these things, and I will be able to design the database without creating anything else, right? So अगर आप वो अप्रोच फॉलो करते हैं कि रिक्वायरमेंट्स को लेके सीधे डेटा टेबल क्रिएट करना, it means you are clearly doing the logical design. So here is data requirement, and by this you are simply creating a logical design, data model mapping. You are directly creating a logical instance of data directly जो आप database create कर रहे हैं, right? That's one way. Some people are very good in this practice, that after reading a simple explanation about a data impression, they can create effectively a very good database. That's one way. That's good, because you are reducing the effort in intermediate step, right? That is called conceptual design. तो वो भी अप्रोच है कि आप डायरेक्टली डेटाबेस क्रिएट कर लें, बट व्हेन इट कम्स टू क्रिएटिंग अ डेटा फॉर a complex scenario, complex business scenario, it will often create a complex database. So that's why it is recommended to have a conceptual design first, then map this conceptual design into the logical design. So conceptual design is basically, what is concept we have discussed. Concept is a first impression, first understanding of anything, right? So we have got these data requirements in a document. Now we have to understand this कि हम इसका डेटाबेस कैसे क्रिएट करेंगे। तो जो रिक्वायरमेंट लिखी हुई है टेक्स्ट में, to create a basic understanding, first impression of a data, about these understanding, we can create a conceptual model, conceptual data model, right? आप में से कई लोगों ने फ्लो चार्ट बनाया होगा, so it is equivalent to that. So before actually coding a solution for a problem, you can create a flow chart, and by flow chart you will have a clear idea about the possible control flow, their inputs, their possible splits, the logical flows, all other things are there. So it will provide you a clear view, right? So similarly in the database, before going for the actual creation of the database, you can create a base first understanding of the data, and that we will be using by ER diagram, which is called entity relationship diagram, right? So to understand how we can create a ER diagram for a certain scenario, we will have 2 lectures for that, and we will be discussing on the board so that we can understand each and every mini details or small details about how to draw the ER diagram, entity relationship diagram, of a scenario, of any real world scenario, right? So after we design a logic conceptual design, we will map this ER diagram or intermediate representation into the actual database, right? And that is called a logical design. And finally, naturally, जब आप database design बंद कर देंगे, तो ये last वाला part जो है physical design, it will taken care by the DBMS itself. When you create some table, database system will create the mappings of that table in with a physical design. So with this, we will be ready with the whole database design part, and now you can simply integrate it with the parallel track जो कि आपका front end application create कर रहा था, right? So basically this is the very simplest, or maybe small way of understanding how a database is being designed overall. So there are two steps involved. First step is to model it conceptually, then mapped into a logical or the actual instance creation, right? So I think with this we can close today's class discussion, right? Because with this it has been actually clear that we can now go. We are actually now started the discussion on the new topic. So in the next lecture we will directly start how to draw the ER diagram in the lecture 7, which is possibly with CSA actually, right? So that's it from the lecture. If you have any doubt, you can discuss with me, or we can take on this particular topic, these two topics which we have discussed today, right? So next maybe 2 to 1 minute at least for the questions which you are raising. If you have any question, you can post directly. I'm waiting for the questions. Okay, so I assume that we are not having any query. So I will be sharing the notes. Okay, sir, can unique? Partosh is asking, can unique constraint take null values? Obviously, unique constraint only ensures about the values which are unique. That's it. Null values are not a value. So null value क्या है इसके बारे में हम किसी और दिन बात करेंगे, because null value means, so database point of view ऐसा समझो आप कि एक तो values जो दिख रही वो हैं, those are called physical values. Other than that, everything is null, and null does not have any meaning or any nature. So we can have an attribute. ईमेल आईडी वाला ही कॉलम ले लो, उसमें सबकी वैल्यूज आप यूनिक रख सकते हैं, सबकी ईमेल आईडी अलग होती है, लेकिन हो सकता है 8-10 लोगों की ईमेल आईडीज अवेलेबल ही ना हो, तो दोज ऑल 7 or 8 वैल्यू विल बी नल. सो कीपिंग नल मींस ऐसा नहीं है कि रिपीट हो रहा है, नल अलाउ रिपीट नहीं कर सकते, ऐसा नहीं. नल इज नॉट हैविंग एनी सिग्निफिकेंस, इट इज नॉट हैविंग एनी कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स, राइट? ओके, सो नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन इफ यू हैव. Otherwise, so multiple null is possible, obviously, because null is not having any property, so you cannot compare a null with another null. Null is not a physical value, right? तो अगर आप डेटाबेस में कभी आप कोई मैथमेटिकल ऑपरेटर लगाएंगे तो आपको पता चलेगा, जैसे आपने सैलरी कॉलम में एवरेज लगा दिया और कुछ सैलरी वैल्यूज में नल है, वैसे पॉसिबल नहीं है कि कोई पर्सन कंपनी में बिना सैलरी काम कर रहा हो, लेकिन ये हो सकता है कि कुछ लोग कहते हैं हमें सैलरी नहीं चाहिए, तो सैलरी वैल्यू उसकी नल होगी इस एम्प्लॉय की. तो उस केस में नल कैसे काम करना चाहिए? अगर आपको एवरेज करना है सैलरी का तो क्या होना चाहिए? एवरेज क्या मतलब होता है कि सम ऑफ वैल्यू डिवाइड बाय नंबर ऑफ वैल्यूज. तो शुड दिस नल विल बी काउंटेड? आपको सोचना है कि 10 लोग कंपनी में काम कर रहे हैं और 10 में से 2 लोग सैलरी नहीं ले रहे हैं, नल वैल्यू है, तो क्या एवरेज में 10 काउंट होना चाहिए डिवाइडेड बाय? अगर 10 होगा तो क्या एवरेज सही वैल्यू दे रहा है? तो इस तरीके से है. तो नल इज नॉट कंसीडर्ड एज अ वैल्यू, फिजिकल वैल्यू, एंड इट इज नॉट काउंटेड, इट्स प्रेजेंस इज नॉट काउंटेड, राइट? सो आई होप थिंग्स आर क्लियर नाउ. सो okay, sir, can primary be null? No, obviously not. To sir, primary key means it will be unique and I'm saying and unique and not null. तो जो वैल्यूज जो प्राइमरी की कॉलम में होंगी वो पासवर्ड आई डोंट नो ईशान. Okay, so primary key column will be attribute will be of nature unique and not null, right? So it will not accept duplicate and null values. So Ishan is asking, under which constraint will we keep password? I don't know. I don't have answer for this. Right? जब आप database design करेंगे तो आपको देखना पड़ेगा. Naman Kumar Singh, only one column a slash attribute can be primary key. ये minimum है. Naman, your answer for your question is we will have at least one attribute as a primary key, right? So primary key का definition क्या है कि अगर आप एक attribute को primary key बनाते हैं, it will not accept duplicate and null value. It will accept only unique and not null, right? मतलब कि उस कॉलम में हर एक इंस्टेंस के लिए, हर एक रो के लिए उस कॉलम में वैल्यू होगी और जो भी वैल्यू होगी वो डुप्लीकेट नहीं होगी. दैट इज द कंस्ट्रेंट इम्पोज्ड बाय प्राइमरी की. अब क्या होगा कि कई सारे टेबल्स में ये होगा, हम देखेंगे आगे कि प्राइमरी की इज हैविंग टू एट्रीब्यूट्स. जैसे कि मैं आपके फर्स्ट नेम और लास्ट नेम दोनों को मिला के प्राइमरी की डिफाइन करूं, तो इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि स्टूडेंट टेबल के अंदर दो प्राइमरी की है. नो, इट मींस these two attributes are part of primary key. These two attributes are defining the primary key. It means the value pair of these two attributes, first name, last name, will be not repeated. आपका नाम जॉन वैंग जो है अगर, तो वो रिपीट नहीं होगा. जॉन वैंग, वैंग जॉन हो सकता है, वैंग एज अ फर्स्ट नेम, जॉन एज, that is obviously should be allowed, but John Wang, one pair of values will not be repeating. तो प्राइमरी की का मतलब ये है कि it can have one attribute inside it, it will have more than one, but when we say two attributes or three attributes are part of primary key, it means the combination of values on these three attributes will not be repeating. That's what simple mean, right? Okay, so Naman, I hope it is clear. Now unique constraint, Ayush is asking, a unique constraint is a feature of a primary. Unique constraint is a feature of, yes, it is a feature of. Harshita says, for check constraint, any other value if provided would be stored as a null. No. So check constraint is basically used to control the values in attribute, right? कि अगर आपको एक्सटर्नली ये आइडिया है कि इस एट्रीब्यूट में हमें दो ही वैल्यूज अलाउ करनी, यही तीन वैल्यूज. लाइक अगर मैं आपके क्लास के स्टूडेंट्स का डेटा लूंगा कहीं, तो मैं चेक कंस्ट्रेंट में मेंशन कर दूंगा सेक्शन वैल्यू, सेक्शन कॉलम में सेक्शन CS1, CS2, CS3 likewise CS6. So there will be 6 only values. It will not allow any 7th value. और null तो बिल्कुल नहीं करेगा because we have not defined null as the value. So whenever we are defining check constraint, it will have a finite number of values. ऐसा नहीं कि उसके अलावा values को null लेगा. Right, Harshita? It's clear. I think it is. Okay, so I think we have done with questions. It is 4:38. So now time is also going up. So if you have any question, let's take 1 minute.